The specific problem with having the names Anne Frank and Shireen Abu Akleh shown in the same context as victims of state violence. The problem here, well, not here, I'm in Prague, but in Germany, is how dare you create this false equivalence between the Third Reich and the state of Israel? Well, all I'm pointing out is that, and I'm not even saying, I don't say, oh, look, these two states both murder. They do, that's all. They're murderous. So although their deaths are 77 or 78 years apart, they are nevertheless connected by the fact that they were murdered by a state. Shireen was murdered by the Israeli state of Israel, and Anne Frank, as we know, was murdered by the Nazis, by the state of Germany. Because the Western world certainly is, and maybe some of the Eastern world as well, is completely organized for the benefit of about 4 unbelievably rich people. And they run the world, and they don't give a F about you or me or anyone out. They don't care about whether we live or die, or they just want to maintain the status quo so that they can go on getting rich and rich. I know this sounds simplistic, and of course it is, but nevertheless, that is the picture that you see if you look out your window. I'm so glad you bring up it's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's really good that you bring that up, because that is a really good demonstration of the smokescreen that's thrown over everything. So a lot of us are talking about a definition of anti-Semitism that actually strikes at the whole problem. I've just spent, as I say, I've done 6 gigs or 5 gigs in Germany, and I'm going to do my last gig in Germany in Frankfurt next week, and whatever. So this is sort of crucial to. In Germany, it's so sad. You walk about and you realize that you can't actually have a conversation with anybody because they are the walking dead. Because Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So it's unthinkable for most. It's not true of all Germans. There are many young activists. In fact, they're probably an appreciable minority, but that you never hear about. It's very difficult to hear their voice in Germany, who would be happy sitting in this room with us now and talking about this, because they too would understand the incredible danger that is in Germany now, which is that all throughout the Bundestag and the government and through all of the media, and in consequence lodged in the minds of most of the population, is this: because of what happened between 1933 and 1945, Israel, which is the monolith, those are the Jews, that's the Jews, the state of Israel is the Jews, can do no harm. No, but no, can't mention it. If you do, the Berlin police may arrest you and lock you up. They're talking about trying to convict me of a crime.
It is really extreme in Germany.
Yeah, Germany is like the hotbed, and it's so sad.
One of the
the British media is already insane. It's even more insane than it ever was now. The Ukraine hysteria, for example, is just you can't believe anything that's reported about Ukraine, for example. But the Corbyn years were just like, it was a pure madness. Like, it was a mass hysteria. And we just saw the wildest things put out there. And this kind of weaponization of identity politics was really the most effective thing. What it is useful for the purposes of Israeli propaganda is in the West. And in Britain, it played this really key role, I would say. Now, JLM was really a marginal, it's a very small organization. And it was, and I argue and lay out in the book, it was essentially a dead organization that was revived in 2015, specifically, in September 2015, after Jeremy Corbyn was elected to the leadership of the Labour Party for the first time, specifically to sabotage Jeremy Corbyn from within the Labour Party. And the reason that was so effective was because it was A, within the Labour Party, and B, it was Labour Friends of Israel. Sorry, it was the Jewish Labour movement, not Labour Friends of Israel. So, of course, both of those groups, they had more or less the same line, but Jewish Labour movement focused on the idea, well, this is anti-Semitism, whereas the Labour Friends of Israel was more, open about its pro-Israel agenda.
And obviously they had to destroy Corbyn because Corbyn actually believes in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, interestingly enough, from the same year as the Nakba. So because he believes in human, and he genuinely does, you can see it's in everything that he's ever said or ever written or ever spoken. Very much like I've been told anyway, I didn't grow up in a Jewish family, but a very strong tradition that you stand with the oppressed. That's why there were so many Jews involved in the civil rights movement back in the 60s, going down into the Jim Crow South. What I want to know is this, whether you have a theory about why Jeremy didn't stand up. Look, you've got it. It's over your shoulder. Oppose IHRA. At the Labour Party conference in 2019, I was going, go on then, tell him to F off. Why didn't he say, no, this is rubbish? Really, because what does that have to do with criminalising anti-Semitism? I know what it has to do with it. It has to do with, do we or do we not believe in fundamental human rights? If we do, like the Jewish household that Naomi Wimborne Idrisi grew up in, we would have inculcated into our hearts the need to stand with the oppressed, to look after the poor, to help the old lady across the road. We would be filled with the need to be the Good Samaritan. I don't mean to denigrate Samaritans. I could get into
I've actually, we do see, there was definitely some evidence that the British deep state, by which I mean the permanent military security apparatus that has a massive say in how Britain is operated and has no democratic control over it. In other words, MI5, MI6, the equivalents of, in a way, of FBI and CIA. They were involved in attacking Corbyn. The investigative journalist Matt Kennard did a study, and he found he did a sort of investigation a few years ago, and he found that, and I mentioned this in chapter 1 of the book, there was 34 national articles in the British press during the first few years of the Corbyn years, that were openly sourced by either MI5 or MI6, anonymous MI5, MI6 sources saying that Corbyn was a threat to national security. Like, I saw one of the people who was attacking Roger today was the MP Alex Sobel, and he was saying that your show in Manchester should be banned. And then I looked on his Twitter profile. He's got a flag, a Ukrainian flag, on his avatar. And I Googled him, and he was calling, he signed a letter calling for more weapons to be sent to Ukraine. Well, we know that British weapons going to Ukraine have been sent to arm literal Nazis in Ukraine, namely the Azov battalion. So there was Ken Livingstone. They successfully did it to Ken Livingstone. They made him into this monster, and he was forced out of the Labour Party. Went one by one. Yes, Naomi as well, another example. They pick them off one by one, and they're trying to do it to you, to sort of have this sort of. But
aided and abetted by the state affiliate broadcasting company, the BBC, who are all very proud of themselves, but no, they're not. They're just a mouthpiece for the ruling.
But as we're live streaming, and so we see, that the pro-Israel lobby acted as this vanguard for empire in a way within the Labour Party to abort the Corbyn project because of the threat of democracy, the threat of, proletarian democracy, the threat of socialism, and the threat of popular control, and the threat of the working class within this country. That the Labour Party would be transformed from an imperialist project into a popular project, acting in the will of the people, doing these terribly, awfully radical things like nationalizing the rail.
Tell you the rest of it, but
We'll have to listen.
the voice of reason is what we all need to be searching for, and it's very hard to find because they, the oligarchs, the ruling class, are trying to keep us from it. They're trying to reason away from us. They do not want us to get our hands on it. They want to destroy all the books. They are book burners. They want us to keep staring at our iPhones, right? But they don't want us to think. That's it, really. So thank you, all of you.
Yeah.